Welcome, everybody. It's great, as usual, to see so many familiar names and customers that I work with all the time. So welcome. We're going to jump right in, and I'll be showing you today some of the new features and functionality of SL 2015. And just so you guys know, CU1 or SP1, Service Pack 1, just came out about a month ago for 2015. So that's the version that I will be showing you today, the latest and greatest. Okay, so I am... Hopefully everybody can see my screen okay. So I'm logged in right now into SL 2015. And one of the cool new things that they've added for sign-on functionality is when you log in, or when you're already logged in and you go to select another company, you're now limited to only seeing the companies that you have access for or to. So I know some of you, I think we have one customer that has like 100 companies, and each user sees every single company out there. Now you will only see the companies that you have access to under access rights, which is nice. You'll also notice that our company logo here, so we're not actually Contoso Limited Demo, but what you can do is you can, in the root directory of where dynamicssl is installed, you can actually put a bitmap file, and it has to be a bitmap. It can't be a JPEG or a PNG or anything else. And if you name it to be the same exact name as your company ID, then when you automatically switch between companies, your icon will change and it can appear at the top of the of each page that you're on. So if I were to switch right now to graphic design, we'll see a different icon appear when I go to an actual menu item, and I can switch right back, and we can see that I've added the Crestwood logo to our screen here. So nice and easy. And there are limitations on the size of the bitmap file, and I can send you that if you need it as well. But super easy to do that. Another thing that they've changed, or actually improved, is the PV lookup window. So we call them the PV lookup or the possible values lookup if you're familiar with the F3 key. I'm sure you know that by heart. With version 2011, Quick Query came out. And what they did with our lookups is they actually made the interface more similar to, they based it more on the quick query type interface. So looks a little bit different, but the nice thing is you can filter on these now, on any of these columns. We can still sort on any column as we did before just by clicking on the column header up here, even if I wanted to sort on zip code or phone. But before you could only start typing the beginning of a vendor ID. If I was looking, for example, for Alexander, I couldn't do a search on Alexander so easily. Now I can just start typing that. I have to make sure this is on vendor name, of course. And it's going to find based on this last name or based on a piece of that, which is really nice. So you can use these filters over here for any piece. I could also filter on zip code, rather. Start typing a zip code if I knew it and pull it up based on that. So a little bit different with the PV windows, and they just added some functionality there, which is nice. So that's a little bit different. With version 2011, the last version, we were introduced to Quick Queries, which is a great tool. And if you're not on that version yet, a little background on Quick Queries. Quick Query is very similar to like SQL Management Studio. It allows the end user to do select statements or queries right into the database, into a table, and pull that data into a table right here for you. So, for example, if I open up the AP Documents query, this query is actually looking into my AP document table, AP Doc, just to be a little bit technical. And from here, I can move columns around. We've seen all that. We can export this to Excel. We can drill back right to the actual record itself and look at that record. Lots of things you can do with that. What they added now with 2015 are, you still have your old option to send this straight to Excel, but they added 3 new options with Excel, which are really cool. The first one that's new is called a connection. If I click on this, I can select which rows I want to pull, because I can actually do filters and filter this out to certain records. I can just pull all rows, all columns, and create a new workbook. And the connection option, what it does is it actually goes into Excel now, and it's creating a connection back to the database for you. to this actual view called QQ_AP_doc, which is just a view. The nice thing about this is you can actually use this, save this file with a connection to the database and open it, and then from here you can actually create a table, a pivot chart, whatever you want from it, and it's going to pull the data based on that quick query for you. You can save this, and this is refreshable because it has a connection to the database. So without even having a login or needing a login to the SL application, you could save this file and distribute it to people and let them actually run their own queries now from Excel, which is really nice. So that was the connection option that I chose off my quick query screen. I can also choose this other option called a query table, and this does the same as the connection, but it actually just opens the query immediately as well for you. Again, this is refreshable, which is really nice. I can save this file, I can use the refresh button, and automatically, you know, if Susie over in AP just wrote a new check and I hit refresh, it's going to automatically pull into my table here now, which is great. Again, I don't need an SL license to do this. I don't need to log into the application. I can just open up this file and run this report or this query at any time, which is very cool. Okay, and the nice thing about the queries, same thing it did before, but it automatically filters my data, so I can actually select a certain vendor if I want, you know, that kind of thing, as it did before, if you're not familiar with these queries. The third option is really cool. They took this one step further and added the ability to create a pivot table on the fly. So I can create a pivot table, goes out here, it's creating a connection. I can still refresh this too, which is nice, but I'm just going to grab like vendor ID, for example. Let's say I grab like reference number and the document amount. But it's building a pivot table for me, and I can change these around, move my columns around, add more fields. I can add subtotals, whatever I want in here, which is really nice. And again, I can save this as a file, and I can refresh this data at any time. The nice thing about this is because they're just Excel files with connections, you can actually add these to a SharePoint site. You could upload these files to a SharePoint site, create a dashboard from them, or whatever you want now without taking up Solomon or SL licenses. Okay. You can tell I've been doing this a long, long time because I still say Solomon after 20 years. Okay. And one other thing about the quick query feature is I'm going to show you at the end of the presentation what's called web apps, and that's new with actually version 2011, but there's new web apps that came out with version 2015. You can now run quick query from the web apps or just from a browser. There's a way to actually just open a browser and run a quick query from there now too with version 2015. So that's new. I wanted to show you some new functionality with the reporting that they added. Let's go to, most all of you have general ledger, and I'm sure all of you run trial balances. They finally, on the sort and select tab, they finally, after years of requests, if we do an F3 here, made this a little bit more descriptive and a little bit easier to read for users. So this report, the trial balance, is actually built or written off what we call a view. And I know some of you have probably seen this when you do your own selects. A lot of this looks like gibberish to me even. But what this is doing is it's taking the view name and then the field within that view. So what they've done now is they added another column, because in your current version you're only seeing that field name, which isn't very descriptive. So now they added a description for these, which is really nice. So you can see, oh, this is actually a count right here. This VR_01610A account hist_account is really just a count. And they're actually adding, which is really nice for developers or report writers, they actually are also including the original source field that view is pulling from. This is the table it's pulling from and the field name, which helps. And then we're seeing every field within the view that's the report is pointing to, but this last column here is also showing whether that field is on the report or not. So that's kind of a nice little reference as well. And just like the PV window I was showing you earlier, you can actually do filters here. So if you were looking, for example, for account and it wasn't showing on the screen right there in my first few fields, it's showing any field now that has a count in it, which helps you narrow that down too. So that works out really well. Another really cool thing is if I actually chose the field account, and I know there's been a request for this for many years too, and then I choose the equal, or whatever I want to do, contains, between. Now finally when I click on this value field and I do an F3, it's it's actually pulling up and queuing the database and finding the possible values for that field. So I want an account equal to 1620, which is really nice. If I was doing it on something else like subaccount, it would show me a list of those, for example. So that's really cool. So I'm changing this to subaccount, for example. Now when I do an F3, it's showing me my possible list of subaccounts there. In your current version, you actually don't get a lookup here, and you actually have to type the account or the subaccount in. So on other reports, for example, like in AP Aging, you could actually do vendor ID equal, and then you can do an F3 and see all your vendor IDs there. It's a lot of times you don't have those memorized, which is nice. So they added that, which is good. We also, something that might not matter to a lot of you, but we've seen where report formats, and I'll bring up like the check format, for example, here. This is under report control maintenance. Before you were limited to 8 formats, and now you can have an unlimited number of formats. So just something new that they added, which is kind of cool. So you're not restricted to just 8 different formats. And these formats are what you're seeing actually when you go to checks, for example. When I'm speaking about report formats, it's this drop down here. So each report, it's unique. This field here has their own formats under them. So now we can actually create an unlimited number under them. Before, we'd have to create a separate report to do that. We can also now default report formats for certain companies. So under the Foundation and Shared Information module, which you all own, you can default different report formats for different companies, which is nice. So in other words, for one company, you could have the laser check form default at the top, and then for a different company, you could actually have the multiple laser check form default, something like that. So you can do that by company, which is nice. We can also, under shared information, they also added this other new screen called field description maintenance, and this will allow you, for certain tables, you can actually rename user fields. So if you have renamed a user field, you can actually put a more descriptive custom description here for that if you've added something there. Okay, so that is seen as well on the ROI or the report screens. Okay. Now you can also, let me go back to that trial balance. And one thing that you'll all be happy about, I know this is a big request, is the ability to email now was added back. For some reason in version 2011 they took that away. Microsoft thought that they would be doing so much more, that users would be doing so much more with publishing on SharePoint because they added that functionality in with 2011. Users said, hey, that's great, but we still want the ability to email as well. So they added that little envelope icon there, and you can now email in a lot of different formats. So that functionality is back, which is great. Let's jump over to an actual module. Let's go to AP and talk about some new functionality there. So with accounts payable, they actually, and you can't see it from a screen, but they actually improved the vendor name auditing for checks. So within the actual tables, they're now storing the vendor name at the time of check creation in both the AP check table and the AP doc table. So that means if a vendor had a different vendor name at the time of printing the check, you could now create a report and see what the actual check was written, who the check was written to at that time, in case a vendor changes its name. Another thing for prepayments, before with prepayments you were limited to apply just one prepayment to a voucher, particular voucher, and now they just added a button down here that you can apply multiple prepayments to one voucher. So that means you could have one vendor where you've created like 3 prepayments, And now you have the invoice come in. You can apply all 3 prepayments to that invoice now, which is nice. One brand new piece that they added, which is very cool, I think, is the ability to do 1099 backup withholdings. So under the 1099 tab, you actually, specific to each vendor, can decide whether or not a backup withholding should be calculated and held for this vendor. What it does is, like, for example, if you've received an incorrect notice for the tax ID number for this vendor, you could change this to once or twice. You have that ability now. But under AP setup, what you do is you actually can decide whether or not you're going to calculate backup withholdings. You could define what that percentage should be. You could actually disable the backup withholding warning, because I'll show you what that does when you actually set that up. And you can set up the backup withholding account and sub-account here. And what happens is, if you have a vendor marked for a backup withholding and you enter, let's go ahead and do this, trade research, you enter a voucher for that vendor. Let's do that. It was trade. It's going to warn you and tell you that this vendor is selected is subject to a backup withholding. And because we set that to be 5%, what happens is if I entered a voucher for $100 here, went ahead and entered it all and released it, it's actually going to take 5% of that and create a new document. Oops, sorry, I need to add that in. I need to finish and balance this out. Sorry, 100 there. Go ahead and release that. Oh, sorry, I totally went in the wrong order. My fault. Let's do that one more time. Okay. Let's see. Trade. Down here. Pull it up. So again, I could turn off this warning message if I wanted to under that AP setup, or I could just put that in, and I should enter an order. Okay. Jump down here. I just skipped a field and then tried to release. Okay. Oh, and you know what? I'm going to put that here. Okay. You know what? I have a hidden field that, sorry, I customized this before and I have a hidden field. But what it does is it actually is going to, when I release the batch, it'll release that voucher, but it will let you only pay $95 of that. And $5 of that will create a new document, and the type will actually be a backup withholding, and it will leave that document on hold, and you can actually take it off hold and release it when you're ready to pay that vendor. So that's what it does for you. Again, you set the percentage under AP setup, and you define for each vendor whether or not you want to calculate the backup withholding. So that's a new feature that it does. There's also a report for that called the backup withholding report, and you can run that, and it should tie out each month to the account that you set up under AP setup. So you'd want to tie that account out to the backup withholding, kind of like an AP aging, to show you any documents that are still sitting out there that are not paid. Okay. With accounts receivable, they added some new features, and one cool thing here is under the invoice and memo, if you're actually adding or entering an invoice here under accounts receivable without having to release it, this invoice is still on hold. I haven't released it at all. There's a new button called the invoice preview button, and I can click on that, and it's actually going to allow me to preview the invoice without releasing it or even setting it to release later. So anything that is balanced or on hold can be previewed now through this button here. They also added the ability, so you don't have to do it one at a time, they added that as a quick query report. So if I go to my quick query reports and I go to accounts receivable, there is a new menu item called AR Invoice Preview, and this is the only batch that I have on hold right now, but I could see all of my either hold or balanced invoices, and I can click on each one and see a quick preview of them just to see that, which is nice. So they added that. Jumping over to project, if you use the project modules, they added a lot of new multi-company and multi-currency functionality for project finally, which is nice. So for example, for allocator, if you're running the allocation processor, you can run this now for a specific company, or you can run it for all companies. You don't actually have to go log into each separate company to run the allocation process, which is nice. For project reports, they also, for all your different project reports, they added the last tab, company selection. They enabled this now, and you can also run project reports for the current company you're logged into or for multiple companies without having to log in and out of them. Remember, they added this functionality for version 2011, so in case you don't know that, for any of your financial reports or distribution reports or other type of reports, you can run a trial balance for multiple companies. You don't actually have to log in and out and run that for each one separately. They added this now for all my project modules. You can restrict the view of projects by company, so users only see projects in the company they have access rights for. And just some other screens that they've added, the company functionality too, multi-company functionality, time review and approval. They've added it for time card status and for the transaction detail inquiry. You can also do it for specific companies or for all now. And this is really nice. So when you're approving time cards, you don't have to log into each company to approve each time card. So they also added a lot of multi-currency functionality to projects, like they have for other modules in the past. So if you pull up a project, they now added some new fields here, so you can actually have a project currency, and you can also have a billing currency. And what that allows you to do is you could actually have a company-based currency, say in US dollars. You could have your project-based currency in Canadian dollars. You could actually invoice in yen, and you could do your subcontracts in pesos. So just they added all the functionality that the other modules have for project now. And project transactions actually store a project-based currency and a company-based currency. And they also added, for budgeting purposes, it also supports multi-currency, so you can maintain and analyze your budgets in a project currency with the visibility to like a base currency conversion. Okay. For the payroll modules, and I know not all of you use payroll, obviously. Some of you might not have even known that you could do payroll within SL, but they've added for payroll, they've added on the review, edit, check screen, you can automatically recalculate deductions and earnings. So if we were to go to this review, edit, check screen, there's a new checkbox here to recalculate the subject earnings. And what it means is if you're in this screen and somebody changes an actual deduction amount, you can actually have this box checked and it will automatically recalculate the deductions and recalculate the earnings from here, which is great, without having to get out, run that process, and then come back. It recalculates automatically. In the net check entry screen, there's no restriction now on the deductions set up now for an employee. Don't have any batches here. It automatically takes the limits, deductions, and exemptions into consideration now for the screen. Another feature is when you're voiding a check in payroll. If you were to void a check, you can reissue checks without rerunning the pay labor interface. So you just click the reactivate earnings checkbox. This is a new checkbox. And when you release this batch, it'll automatically reissue the check without having you going to have to rerun that pay labor interface process again. And then under the employee history screen, there's a new button here, this View Pay Audit, and it actually is now tracking all changes to deductions, tax tables, and employee pay information. So it's keeping track, adding the date, time, and user that changed those sensitive tables. Okay, so that's new. All right, so now what I wanted to do is actually talk about web apps and show you a demonstration on the web apps. So if you're not familiar with web apps, they actually came out with version 2011. And what they are, it's actually replacing Business Portal, but it's a way to access dynamicssl from a web, which is a very cool thing. And what Microsoft is doing for the web apps is actually they've released the ones that really the screens and the modules that were available in Business Portal first, things that you would expect to access via web, things like time entry, time approval, expense approval, requisition requests, so item requisition requests that feed to purchasing. And with 2015, they just added a whole bunch of new modules and features. And down the road, I'll show you at the end here, there's a path, a roadmap for other modules and menu items to be included with this, and I'll show you that. So eventually, they're hoping to add things like the financial modules, the ability to actually do this, some of the financial screens and reporting through web apps, which is cool. So I'm actually going to jump over to this PowerPoint presentation and show you this. So the one I chose to demonstrate for today's purposes are expense entries, since I think that's something that's familiar to everybody, whether you use that in SL right now or not. I'll show you how the web apps look and feel, and I'm going to actually create an expense report and attach a receipt to it to show you what that looks like. So Microsoft Dynamics SL Web Apps, it provides access to Microsoft Dynamics SL through a web browser on a desktop, a laptop, a tablet, or a smartphone. So that's the big new improvement over Business Portal. You can actually access and enter your expenses or time through like a tablet or a smartphone. I could grab my iPad and jump on it right there, or from my smartphone. So this demonstration will walk through the high-level features of project expense entry. Okay, so here's what the home menu looks like. These are the menu options that I have available to me through web apps right now. So I'm just going to click here to go to project. And under my project menu, I'm now seeing the different menu items available under project. So I have expense entry, time entry is the first one, approvals, project maintenance if I wanted to set up a new project from here, employee position rate maintenance, and project analyst. Okay, some new things just so you are aware, we have resource management now, so project resources and utilization, inventory, payroll. Okay, to add a new expense item, so I clicked on that expense entry button, and now I'm adding a new expense item. I can just click the new row button over here, and then I can enter an expense type. If I know it, I can actually type it in, or I can click on the magnifying glass to view a list of expenses. If I click that magnifying glass, it'll actually bring a window up that looks like this, and I can actually search for a certain type, or I can just click down here. I'm actually going to select the hotel billable option, and then I can actually enter or look up a project. This is the project field, so I can click that magnifying glass again, or I could simply type in the project if I knew it. And I'm actually going to choose project C003. I can actually use the search at the top up here, the top of my window, and search by project ID, description, customer ID, or name. But I'm just going to click on that, and then I just need to enter or look up a task. Same thing, and again I can search on task ID, description. I'm going to select that task, and then I'm just going to enter the units here. I'm going to type in a rate of 129. So I stayed 4 nights at a 129 rate, and it's automatically going to calculate my source amount or my total amount for me for my units and rate. At the bottom, I can click on my notes and attachment button, and I can actually click on the note, and I could actually type in and enter a note here. Then I can click the Save button here, and I can go back. And now if I wanted to, I could actually enter or attach a receipt here. So I click on the new attachment. The very cool thing about this is that if you were doing this from your iPhone or from your smartphone or from an iPad, something like that, you could actually, right at this point, take a picture of your receipt and then browse right to your camera roll and add it right from there. So you don't even have to take a picture, email it to yourself, download it onto your laptop, and then browse to it. It's instant. It's right there, which is really, really nice. Or back in the old days, which I used to have to do, tape it to a piece of paper and mail it into your accounting department, which was a waste of paper and took a lot longer. So it's very cool. You can attach straight from your smartphone camera or from a file already on your laptop or iPad or phone. So you just click the browse button, we browse right out to it. I'm going to grab that receipt 1, click the open button to attach the receipt there. I can enter a description if I'd like, and then I can click the OK button, and now that attached receipt information is displayed. To review the receipt, I can just click on that attachment entry. Okay, there's a link right there. I can click on that hyperlink to view the receipt. That link is the same thing that approvers are going to see when they are reviewing my expense report. Okay, and the nice thing is that link creates a link right out to the picture of that receipt, which is nice. Okay, and then I can just click the back button, and to review previously entered expense reports, I can use this lookup here at the top to pull up other documents or expense reports. So I, as the user, have a visibility to all my expense reports, which is nice from this web. And I can actually search for expense reports, again, by document number, status, type, description, a lot of different fields. So I could pull up, here's a list of all my different expense reports, and I can do searches at the top from that. Down at the bottom, for approvers and for myself, the notes and attachment button will have a little icon, a visual cue that displays to show that there's a note or attachment that exists with this expense report. Okay, and I can click on that, and I can also then click the back button here. And then from here I can actually click the home button, and it takes me right back. Oh, sorry. If I wanted, I could actually click up there, and I can run a report anytime, so I could actually see my expense report, my expense reports, which is nice as a user too, from this screen. Okay, and that report button was up in the top right. And then from here, if I wanted to, I could click the home button and go back to my main menu where we just started. Okay, and back here. So that is just one of the screens, one of the entry screens available in the web apps. But looking at the SL roadmap, so they added, going in the different releases, back in 2011 FP1 is when they added the business analyzer piece. 2011 SP2 actually added some of the web apps. In 2014, with CU1, they added project time, expense approvals, and project analyzer. Now with 2015, this green space here, they've added the ability to add projects under project maintenance, communicator, approvals, delegations, and the ability to do quick queries from the web apps, which is nice. They also added the ability to run Business Analyzer on multiple platforms. You can actually run that now on your smartphone, from an iPad, from a lot of different platforms. There's actually an app for Business Analyzer that you can actually download too. And then the first blue box is CU1. That's the release we're at right now. They've added resource planning, project employee and utilization, budgeting, project budgeting, item requests, and payroll time entry as well. They haven't listed here, but in future releases, they're going to continue to add more and more web apps. So that's their big focus for 2015 is adding to this web app list. So that's it with web apps, and you can learn more at microsoft.com/dynamics. So from here, Jen, if we want to open up to questions, we can do that now.
Thanks, Tiffany. If anybody does have questions, please type them into the question area, and we can take a little time and go through those. Tiffany, I do have one question. Okay. Somebody was wondering if users would still need access to the SL database. So I think it was back when you were showing us that initial screen that you only see the companies that you have access to.
Yes.
The question's kind of users of these connections would still need access to the SL database.
Well, it automatically saves when the quick query is generated. I believe it saves the it's a SQL user actually, and the password. There was a prompt for that in the connection, but so no, it doesn't use an SL license for that. But the connection does use like a SQL login. So, but it automatically takes the one as the user that I'm logged in as. So. But yes, so it doesn't require an extra license or anything for that. I hope I answered that correctly for them. So in other words, I could share that file with the connection to someone else as long as that login information was saved there already. They don't need to actually retype it. It's saved with that file, and it does not require an SL license for that. And that's the big gain from that, is now we're able to, publish reports out or let users run and refresh their own queries without bugging accounting and having them run reports and send and email them to them. So that's a good question. Other questions?
Not yet, but let's give people a few minutes. Sometimes trying to type questions in takes a little bit longer than verbally speaking them out loud.
Absolutely. And I'll go ahead and talk and add some more information just while we have the blank space. I know some of you are already moved to Management Reporter, some of you haven't, and that's fine too. They are continuing to improve it, and I know when it first came out it was a little clunky. There's so many versions in and deep now. They're adding some really cool things with Management Reporter 2, which is what has replaced FRX, if you're not familiar with it. But similar to like the query and the refreshing, you can now actually run reports to like a web interface, and you can click a refresh button, and it actually refreshes financial reports for people as well, without having to send reports to people. Now that does take a light viewer license for Management Reporter, but the cool thing about that is they can save that web link, and just go to that web link, it pulls up the balance sheet, they can hit a refresh button, and it actually pulls in reloads the numbers and the data for the balance sheet without having to rerun that. Without having access to Management Reporter, without needing access to SL, they can run it from a web browser, which is cool. So,
is that something that you're going to go over in the next webinar that you're doing for us, Tiffany?
Actually, yes. Yep, the next webinar, what date was that, Jen? Do you remember?
No, I can look it up real quick.
Okay.
They're always listed out on our website at the top. There's a link called Events on our crestwood.com site. And if you go under Events, Reporting and Distribution Options and Management Reporter, we have that webinar scheduled for an hour, again from noon to 1 p.m. on Wednesday, June 10th.
Okay, great.
That'll be neat to see.
Yeah, so June 10th we're going to cover a lot of the new functionality in Management Reporter, so even if you use it, some of the cool distribution options and reporting and security and all of that. So that's on June 10th, same time too. So there's a new question, I think, how does licensing on the web apps work? And that's a great question. It actually does require like a light web app license. I know if you already have Business Portal, those translate over for the web apps, I believe. I'm not so good on the sales side, so if you have questions on that, we can send you pricing. But it's like a light user for the web apps, so it's specific to that. But yes, it does require a license for that. Good question. Other questions? One thing I didn't mention that's cool, this is more for us as consultants than you, but with 2015, they actually made the upgrade process a lot easier. The install piece is easier as well. This is more technical, but it used to be if you had a lot of custom reports or even custom report formats, or even if you didn't have custom reports, but you changed the order of those report formats. So like the check format, you would put multiple stub laser check as the default. You might not have even known we were doing this as your consultant, but we, after an upgrade, had to go in and we had to change the report control table back with the right defaults for you. And the nice thing now is the upgrade doesn't override that. So we don't have to go back and make all those changes. So they're improving that piece too, which is nice for us. And 2015 is compatible with SQL 2014, just so you know, with Office 365 as well. No other questions? Oh, sorry.
Well, thanks, Tiffany. If people have questions afterwards, too, I know sometimes I don't always think of something until I have a little bit of time to process everything I learned in the webinar. They can feel free to email me. I can pass it along to Tiffany. We'll make sure that we get your questions answered. So on that note, we can definitely wrap things up. If people do have some final questions, we'll stay on for a couple minutes here yet, Tiffany. But as you're leaving the webinar, again, if you wouldn't mind just taking a moment and filling out the few questions that pop up on your screen, I would greatly appreciate it. Again, if you want to go to our website, take a look at our events page. And if you're interested in that MR webinar, there is a registration link for it for Wednesday, June 10th. So feel free to sign up for that one. And I want to thank everybody for joining us today. And thank you to Tiffany very much for the wonderful demo and presentation on SL 2015. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Jen. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining.